My name is Mattson. I'm from northern Minnesota. My professional background is a biologist and archaeologist. Past is the foundation of the present and of the future. And so there's a great deal, in my opinion, to be gleaned from past knowledge as far as utilization of wild species, and also, as has shown up in a lot of agricultural work, in modifying agricultural, or archaeological work rather, in modifying agricultural processes so that they are both more healthful and more sustainable into the future. So there is an overlap. Again, the past is the foundation which we all came from. And to utilize that knowledge, and again, it's such a vast topic, I can't hardly get into it in depth, but you can take a specific species or the utilization of a specific species, and by effectively and safely applying that knowledge, hopefully set a better precedent for future utilization. I think two of the most underrated words in the English language are perspective and priority. Every decision that you make, whether it's that cup of coffee in the morning or the major decisions in your life, is based on your perspective and priority. Decision making on a local group level is based on perspective and priority. On a national and international level, it's based on perspective and priority. Understanding and being closer to the land, closer to the core fundamentals of life, in my opinion, gives you a firmer perspective and a firmer set of priorities. So if you say you don't have enough time, to me, I would say your perspective and priority might be subject to a little modification. Meaning, if the mall and a Nintendo game is more important than fresh air and good food, where's your perspective? Where's your priorities? So you could, and I have done it, if you don't have access to rocks, if you cut enough.
So what are you folks eating there?
This is a wild stew, and its ingredients: burdock, Canadian greens. What else? My gosh, there's some more.
The nettle powder.
Nettle powder have this nutty taste.
What you got for breakfast there, Sam?
I have roasted camas bulbs that I collected in British Columbia, mixed with black locust flowers, and I was going to sweeten it with maple syrup, but it's sweet enough as it is. The camas bulbs are pretty sweet. So. Choke cherry will get up to about 1 foot in diameter and up to about 40 feet tall. In fact, I have one on my property that's about 35 feet tall and about 8 inches, so it gets to be a small tree. Sometimes they divide choke cherries into western and eastern species, but they look nearly identical. They're real variable. Certainly across the northern plains and the Rockies, choke cherry was the most important fruit in the diet of Native Americans, it's really a sacred plant, especially to the Lakota. And if any of you have been through Lakota ceremonies at Sweat Lodge, you know that choke cherry is used in a number of ceremonies, they're also delicious. The key with choke cherries is if you want to make dried choke cherry products, which is traditionally most of the choke cherries were eaten dried, you want to make sure they're fully ripe. But if I pour off the juice, which is maybe 15% of the crushed choke cherry volume, that juice contains almost all the astringency. The pulp left over, to me, it's as good as dried blueberries or dried service berries. It's just delicious. So every year I'll gather about 10 or 15 gallons, or whatever I have time to, usually at least 10 or 15 gallons, and make dried choke cherry fruit leather. Nannyberry is a good friend to the highbush cranberry. You almost always find them together, and in a lot of areas you'll find nannyberry, highbush cranberry, and elderberry together. That's one of the guilds Steve was talking about. A prune, or it looks somewhat like a raisin. Similar type of flower cluster, an umbel-like cluster. If you look at the leaf stalks, the petioles, you'll see that they have wings. 2 very large wings on the petioles that were right under the flower cluster. When you look at the nannyberry in the winter, It has a bud that looks like a crane's head. It's the flower cluster bud is in there, and this big bud scale wraps around it, and then it's a long pointed bud. Looks just like a bird's beak and a bird's head. My name is Samuel Thayer, and I've been foraging since I was 4 years old, and I hope to forage until the day I die.
How old do you think humans are?
Well, I guess I follow the idea that anthropologists put forth, that we're between 125 and 200,000 years old.
And how old do you think plants are?
Well, plants are, I'm not exactly sure, but I think it's in the billion-year range or so.
So how do you think human beings have been shaped by plants?
I feel like a lot of what we are as human beings is shaped by our relationship with plants, and I think it's not often discussed. For example, I think our predisposition to be able to read, or our ability to read, comes from an innate ability that we have developed to instantaneously recognize patterns. And that's something that we had in relation to plants, and we used for thousands and thousands of years with plants, and only much later that cognitive ability to instantly recognize patterns was applied to written symbols. You know, people do seem to be obsessed with time, and I think it's an unhealthy obsession, because the unit of time that we each have is a life. We each have one life to live, and we choose what the priorities are while we're alive. And if we choose maximizing the amount of money we can earn, or the amount of stuff we can buy in that life, then all of a sudden we want to break it up into smaller units and measure the amount of money we can accrue in that smaller unit of time. But if we want to measure our success in life by the experiences we have, the knowledge we acquire, the relationships that we develop and maintain, by something spiritual, something more meaningful than just material wealth, time starts to lose the value that people place on it. And it, not that it becomes valueless, but it has a totally different value. For me, the experiences that I have harvesting wild food and preparing wild food are absolutely invaluable. There's no way I could put a dollar value on that. I absolutely enjoy picking hickory nuts. I mean, there is nothing better than being out some October day and filling a basket with hickory nuts, and then filling another one and filling another one, listening to the squirrels, listening to the turkeys. You know, it's just wonderful. And why would I care to try to put a dollar value on that? People work so they can have the leisure to do things like that. So why would I take something that to me is leisure and consider it work? I think we have a very dysfunctional view of time, and when people say that they're busy, or I think that's kind of ridiculous. I kind of get sick and tired of hearing people say, oh, but nobody has time these days. These days aren't shorter than those days used to be. It's just a matter, what that really means is people have changed their priorities. And yes, they have changed their priorities, and I think that's to our detriment in every way, and it's to the detriment of the earth and our relationship to it, our spiritual selves, and just our enjoyment of life. So once you change your priorities, time becomes not, it doesn't cease to be a factor, but it becomes a different factor.